Hello, I'm Hannah Sloan from the Poplar Creek Public Library, and today I'm going to walk you through sewing a makeup brush travel case. It rolls up nicely and ties to fit into your luggage, and you can toss it in the wash when you get home. Please forgive the pins, they are just there to show the pocket slots off. To make this, you will need a few things: a sewing machine, an iron and ironing board to make the creases, 3 fat quarters. I picked 3 that matched a little bit. Batting or interfacing. This is your preference. I used interfacing to make it a bit stiffer, but you can use batting to make it fluffy if you wish. A roll of thread that goes with the fat quarters. Scissors, clips or pins, your choice. A sewing gauge or a ruler, and a water-soluble marking pencil. First, pick the fat quarter that you want to be the pocket of your project. I picked the owls. You want to cut out a 7.5 by 12.5 rectangle, then fold that in half lengthwise to make a 3 3/4 by 12.5 pocket. Use your iron to give it a good crease. Next, you want to decide which of your other 2 fat quarters you will make the outer edges and ties with. A tip before you cut the fat quarters have one side longer than the other. It doesn't need to be exactly 22 inches. As long as it's close to that, you should be okay. So the outer edges will be cut out of 2.5 by 22. So those are the outer edges strips. You will need 2 of those. Out of that same material, you will need to cut 2 1.5 and by 22 strips to make the ties of your project. Then out of that same fat quarter, you will also cut out this one side of your project. It will be 8 by 12.5. I've used this as the outside of my project, so the back side of what we're going to look at when we do this recording. Then out of that third fat quarter, you will make the other side of your project. 8 by 12.5 is what we're looking for. You will also need to cut your interfacing or batting this size as well. I ironed my interfacing onto the back of this side so it would work nicely with my project. Feel free to do the same. Now it's time to arrange things. I arranged mine so the outer edge strips match the back of my project. So when I roll it up, it all looks like one material. But you can switch this if you like. I clipped the back side, the interfacing, the front side, and the pocket in place as shown above. You cannot see it in the picture, but the back side actually is face down, with the interfacing between the face down material and the face up material of the pink flowers. Next, we are going to measure where we want our stitches to go for the pockets, holding the brushes. You want to leave 1 1/4 on both sides, so mark those first with your seam gauge and pencil, then add the rest. I use the pattern on the bottom of this slide. You can alternate between 1 inch and 2 inch spaces if you'd like to, but you really only need about 2 of the 2 inch spaces. Next, you want to sew straight lines down where you marked. There is no need to backstitch here, since we will be going over it later. Next, we are going to make the ties. So set what you have aside for now and pick up the 1.5 by 22 inch strips. We are going to iron them, so get that ready too. They need to be folded lengthwise in half and iron them to get that good crease. Then we will open those up and fold both sides in again to that crease that we just made, and iron again to make it really good and creased. So we should have 3 creases down the length of the strips. The strips should show no raw edges along the length by folding the outer creases down to the center and then bringing them together. You will sew down the length of the strips. Then on one side of each, you will need to fold the end up at least twice to get rid of that raw edge on one of those sides. We then attach them by the raw edge between the front and back material. You will insert the raw edge right where the pocket starts on one side. You can use it on the right like I did here in the picture if you would like. We just need to clip it for the moment, so don't sew yet. But we want to make sure the ties don't get in the way while we do so. The outside edges, when we sew the outside edges on, we don't want the ties to get in the way. So I just tucked them into the center part of my project for the time being. We are going to do the same ironing we did for the ties to make the outer edges. So fold the outer edges in half down the length of the 2.5 by 22-inch strips and iron to crease. Then open it up and fold the sides into the crease, just like you see pictured here. This is where it can get a bit tricky, so pay close attention. We attach the edges around the outer raw edges of our project. They should cover up where we attach the ties, but the two bigger issues that make this tricky is the corners and where on one of the outside edges and the other outside edge will meet. There will be a little overlap and we have to fix it so there's no raw edges there. So let's talk corners. You want to attach the outer edge with that center crease as the top of your project all the way around. They should wrap around the whole thing, but corners can bunch if you don't fold them properly, so try really hard to get this right. I set one side of it like you see in the picture, and then the outer edge just the same, the other edge just the same, keeping it tight. Then I went back to the corner and folded front and back the same direction to create a triangle fold and clipped it in place. Where edge meets edge, I made sure to line them up just the same on both sides and folded the end of the overlapping one just enough to get rid of the raw edges. This isn't like you have to fold it in half or anything. You're just going to fold the end over enough the raw edges disappear and match up both of the sides perfectly. You will then sew around the entire edge all the way around your project. You need to backstitch over the ties a few times to make sure they stay in place. But you want to make sure that you don't have a jagged line around this outside. You want it to be a straight line. Congratulations, you just made a makeup brush travel case. Thank you for joining me today, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me at teen@pclib.org and I will do my best to answer any questions you may have.